Welcome to another episode of Lazy Wealth Creation. And following some wonderful feedback from our listeners, our subscribers, and of course our wonderful editing team, we have been asked, Carl, what banks should we be looking at if we want to set up a business? So rather than just talking in general terms, what I thought we'd do is we would look at some of the banks that we have worked with, that have supported us, who are what we call challenger banks. They are online banks. And the goal is that we want to go through those with you each. There's 5 of them that we're going to talk about in this episode. 1 is Tide, 2 is Revolut, 3 is Zempla, used to be Cash Plus, 4 is Monzo, and 5 is Starling. So we're going to review each of these banks. We're not being sponsored by any of them, so this is an honest review and accounting of what we have experienced as direct consumers from a business perspective. So, are we ready? Let's begin. Now, if our wonderful editing team are on their game today, I'm hoping if I say the word Tide, something magic will appear above my head that looks remotely like the Tide banking card. So we have used Tide since 2020, and we've used that across multiple businesses for multiple service level businesses. So that's customer service facing, really, where we employ lots and lots of people. We currently have Tide accounts which they take in about £100,000 to £130,000 a month per account, and there's a lot of wage bills or salaries that we have to pay from that, ranging from the £80,000 to the £100,000 mark per month. The actual app, when you're using Tide, is quite user-friendly. The features on the app that you will be able to get hold of, they're actually quite useful too. So you can do invoicing from them. So if you've not got an accountant or you're not familiar with how to do invoicing, it's actually really easy to do. So we can actually do our invoicing straight from the app and it gets emailed to the client directly. More recently, they've actually have what we call Tide Pay. So you can actually take payments on your phone like a card machine, like what we call a PDQ. And the only sort of limitation to that I can see at the moment is that you have to have a Tide account to have that facility. So you can't use it like a normal merchant PDQ machine. You have to have a Tide account. The other really good thing about Tide actually is if you're just starting up, you will actually be able to set up a limited company through Tide for free, which has actually some real advantages because it means if you're not used to doing that sort of paperwork, Tide pretty much take care of that for you. Some of the things you have to be wary of, you do need to provide ID, which is pretty standard in the banking industry anyway. It's all done electronically, so you can't go into a branch, so you can't sort of speak to a human being in person and get them to sign the card or anything like that. It's all done remotely on an app. The disadvantages of Tide, I would say, are the customer service app is shocking. I mean, it's awful. What I mean is you might have a general inquiry that could take them 48 hours to get back to you on. They are constantly asking anti-fraud, anti-money laundering checks in accounts, which take days to resolve, and they can limit the account activity that you can do. So if you're turning over sort of £100,000, £130,000 a month, and Tide just pop up one day and say, sorry, we're going to restrict your account until you verify these 10 transactions, which are the same 10 transactions you get every single month, by the way. And they're usually, in our case, from like local authorities or local government. That can become really frustrating, and it does take time away from you running your business. So you do have to sort of balance that out. They do try to promote their sort of Tide Plus services. I think it's called something else now, but basically you pay them a monthly fee, and that allows you to have unlimited invoices. It gives you access, allegedly, to better customer service, which I don't really agree with. And there's a range of other stuff in there as well, free transactions as well. So at the moment, this may be changing in the near future, but each transaction there's a 20 pence cost, so whether that's in or out. And for us, that's not a huge cost. It's about £25 a month. It's not a big deal. But obviously, that's a lot of transactions for 20p, right? So when you are working it out that way, they'll say, oh, well, you can subscribe to us for $14.99 a month. So you'll save yourself approximately 10 quid a month. And then you'll get all of those transactions for free. So it does sort of work out if you're doing a lot of transactions. But it depends on your business. If you've only got one customer or two customers and you send 2 invoices, you probably don't need it. But if you're sending 30 invoices or 50 invoices and you're paying 35 staff or 50 staff, then it might actually work out better. On the whole, it's an account that's managed via app. It works pretty well for what it does. You can't do international transfers. That's another sort of disadvantage I didn't mention. When you've got an international business and an international arm like we have, that's sort of where the limitation really does draw the line for us. But on the whole, to get you started, Tide is actually a pretty useful thing, particularly when it comes to getting you set up with your first limited company. I have covered limited companies and sole traders and the difference on previous episodes. So that's Tide. Stop! Before you go any further, if you're enjoying this content, remember to give us a subscribe, a like, a follow, or a share. Every single person that clicks on those buttons, it means the world to us because it helps us reach more people and get people educated in how to get wealth the lazy way. So now we're going to work on Revolut. Now, we've had a Revolut account since 2023, and we use that primarily for transactions related to one of our property companies. And to be fair, there's multiple directors and multiple cards, therefore, and multiple access to the apps required. And I actually find Revolut quite fair. I'm hoping there's a picture of Revolut above here. One of the disadvantages of Revolut, I would say, though, is the time it takes to open the account and the time it takes to go through security verification. For us, it took about a week, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're keen to get going and you've got to deposit funds in your business account, then a week can be a really long time. In terms of the customer service, I've actually found them very helpful, very useful, and I also think they send us a nice sort of review every week to tell us exactly what's happened in our account, what transactions have transpired over the week. And I actually find that little nudge quite helpful. So to be fair, I think Revolut it's a real middle of the market, but I actually find it quite good. So on the whole, Revolut is quite up there from my perspective, but I have dealt with colleagues who are also in the property space where Revolut has just closed their account without notice because they might have 4 accounts with Revolut, actually. And because they say, oh, you can't have any more than X amount of accounts with us, we're just closing down your account. And they do that very quickly without notice. So you do need to be careful if you've got multiple businesses on the go. I would probably recommend diversifying your banking just in case they put a freeze on your accounts. So that's Revolut. Now we're going to move on to Zempla, which previously was called Cash Plus. Now, I started with Zempla, Cash Plus, back in 2017. So this is actually the longest bank I've had for a business bank account. And at the time, there was not many competitors around there, challenger banks who were just online banking. It was typically like red brick. So you'd have to go into the branch and get your stuff. And at the time, I couldn't get a bank account for my business that had started because I had bad credit and I'd not opened a business before that using these sort of banking criteria. So it was really difficult for me. So along comes Cash Plus, and I think at the time it was £69 to set up the account. It might have been £99, I'm not sure. It was under 100 quid. And it was the first time I'd ever seen an online bank before. So I've had the most experience with them. And I have to say, as a whole, they've been fantastic. And we're still actually with them for that particular account. In fact, actually, we've got a couple of accounts with them. And we've never really had any huge problems with them. You get a MasterCard portable card delivered, same as with the others that I've already mentioned. And the app is actually quite user-friendly. And I think after about 3 months, they also gave us an overdraft of about 500 quid, which I thought was quite useful. Didn't really use it, but it is there. It is available on our online banking app. So, if you're going to go over your credit line, then you've got that 500 quid sort of safety net to support you. The other thing I like about Cash Plus is on the app, we've got, like I said, a few accounts, so it's actually quite easy to switch between the accounts when you log in. The drawback on Cash Plus Zempla is you have to log out of everything and then go back and start the whole process again. You can't just switch between accounts. Again, similar to others, international payments are a nightmare. But one of the advantages you do have with them is you can pay cash in using the post office. And there's limits to how much cash you can put in. You can apply to change those limits, but you can typically put a couple of £1,000 in a day if you receive cash payments from customers, which is always helpful. There is a charge for it. It's a lot more expensive than getting a bank transfer. However, from my point of view, when we've had people who paid us cash, sometimes it's been large quantities, sort of over £5,000 for some of our customers who are elderly and don't believe in bank accounts. So they go to the post office, they get their pension, they store it in a shoebox, and then they give us the money as cash. And having a Zempla account, a Cash Plus account, has been really worthwhile for us. So we were able to sort of pay those funds in. I've also used Zempla from a health and safety business that I have called Simply Better Safety. And the thing about that is I do a lot of work for people who are small corner store shop owners, and they need fire risk assessments doing in order to refinance their property or to get a mortgage. And they all pay in cash. Nobody ever pays me via card or via bank transfer. It's always cash. So having the ability to put cash into a bank account actually is incredibly helpful for me. In terms of disadvantages, I would say you can't really email them. I mean, there is an option to email, but they take a long time to get back and they might not understand. So phoning them is usually the best option, but they do only keep office hours. So if it happens on a Saturday at 10 o'clock where something's happened to your card, then yes, you can cancel the card, but what you can't do is phone somebody up and query a transaction, for example. So overall, I actually think Cash Plus, Zempla, although you've got to pay the £70 or £100 fee, actually I think they're quite worthwhile in the long run. The other thing I would mention as well is they also do a personal account too, so it's not just business, so you can sort of interchange there. So that's well worth considering. The next one we're going to talk about is Monzo. Oh, where do we start with Monzo? Monzo has been one of the longest times to open a challenger bank, an online bank account, out of all of the accounts that we're going to review. They take forever to reply to anything. If they ask you a query, they ask you to send documents in, you send them straight away. They give you a deadline, by the way, so you've got to submit it within 5 days. You send it within 10 minutes and you're waiting 3-4 days for a response, and then they'll ask you for something else, like for example, like we were asked for passport, bank statement, utility bill, driver's license. So standard stuff, all provided, no problem at all. So you think, great, that should be easy. And with other accounts that we've already mentioned, it was. Monzo, 4 days later, 5 days later, nothing still. Then they come back and they say, oh, we just need to do these checks. Okay, you need to do some checks, no problem. 5 days later, still nothing. So you've got to really be careful with these online banks. They're not as flexible as you might think. However, a lot of employees who have low credit or no credit, who are UK citizens, a lot of them seem to have no issue at all opening Monzo bank accounts because I've paid loads of them. And they also have multiples of them as well because they change. I don't know what the reason is for them changing, but they change the Monzo bank account number very frequently. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but something to be mindful of if you're an employer and you're paying people's wages. It doesn't prevent you from paying the money in, but it seems to have some sort of problem with the staff. So just something to be mindful of. The advantage of Monzo, again, it's an app-based platform, so you can sort of see where your money is eventually when you log in. But it's not really the one I would recommend on my experience personally. So I think for me, Monzo is not the greatest, but I'm sure there will be people. Comment below if you disagree, by the way, if you've had a great experience with Monzo. We love people to have alternate points of view. And then finally, we're going to talk about the other challenger bank that we know about, which is Starling. Starling, where do we start with Starling? So Starling is very good if you have an account. But if you're a multiple business operator, they can be an absolute nightmare to deal with. They certainly have an aversion to property investors. They don't understand the property market. So if you were looking to get into property, Starling would probably not be my bank of choice. I would probably say if you were starting up a small business to business, selling stuff to businesses, or business to consumer, selling stuff to the end user, like an Amazon account or an eBay account or something like that, or a small shop, I think Starling would probably be a good choice. But I think overall, it's not for somebody with multiple businesses who's got a lot of experience as a business operator. I would probably look at a different account. The other issue with Starling, it did take a little while to open. And again, you are restricted how many accounts you can have with them. So again, there's 5 accounts we've talked about, or 5 banks we've talked about here. I would recommend sort of diversifying your portfolio across your banking options, so that if one account suddenly goes dark or they need something and they've frozen your account, you've got a backup, something to help you out. I hope that's been a really useful review of all of the main 5 challenging banks here in the UK for you. If you would like to drop us a comment, if you disagree with anything, we'd love to have your feedback, and we'd love to get you on the show. If you've got a great experience with these sort of banks and you say, actually, Carl, we've turned over £1 million with this bank and this is what we found, let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. And thanks very much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe and follow to the channel. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.